The journey of playing crappy horror games on Steam is a long and never-ending one, and also one that I couldn't possibly hope to keep up on my own. Which is handy because most of the games I end up doing videos on are things suggested by viewers. This was the case with things like The Killing Antidote, Ruined Nurse, and also case in point, Ebola Village, a first-person survival horror game that is the perfect example of we've got Resident Evil 4 at home. Developed by the aptly named Indie Game Studio, yeah, with there even being underscores used on their Steam page, as if it was like a placeholder title or something that they just forgot to update. And it really was one of those instances where as soon as I loaded it up, I knew I was in for something special, even though that AI banner they originally used on Steam should have been a dead giveaway. One of the very first things they show you is the violence warning screen, which is pretty much just the RPD from Resident Evil 2. Which I later found out is even taken from the third Ebola game. Oh yeah man, there's a whole series of these.
This is shit.
Then when I got to the main menu, I noticed how the music doesn't even loop properly. Like, listen to it. But what is Ebola Village about on the whole? Well, to be honest, it's really easier if I just show you.
До свидания.
Hold on to your butts.
Right, so when we start a new game, the first thing we see is a woman named Maria, sitting in her living room in her underwear, watching a news report on the TV that's very clearly 16:9 footage that's been stretched down to 4:3. This report talks about some kind of virus outbreak in the area due to a pharmaceutical company called Panicum. And then after seeing this, Maria decides to check in on her mum at the nearby village to, make sure she's doing okay. Only thing is, she's not answering her phone, so we gotta get dressed and then head on down to check on her ourselves.
Придется самой ехать в село Поповка.
We then leave the apartment for the first time to find some guy sitting in the stairwell playing guitar, looking like one of those old animatronics from the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland. Then after nabbing a pair of bolt cutters, because what would a survival horror game be without one of these things, we break into a locked apartment to find a fuse, so we can turn the power back on in our own apartment and enter the bathroom, which is where Maria left her license. Okay. Also having left some pretty nasty floaters in the toilet too. I mean, god damn girl, what are you eating?
Holy shit!
Anyway, finally after all of that, which took me like 20 minutes by the way on my first playthrough, we get in our car and drive to the nearby village. Driving there in whatever the fuck this car is supposed to be, and getting a basic tutorial on how to combine ammo and healing items in our inventory. With this tutorial just flat out using a photo of some Jill Valentine cosplayer. Yeah, literally, just a photo of some random cosplayer thrown in there because, sure, why not? Soon finding a pistol after that, and then very quickly getting attacked by the first zombie. A zombie who kind of looks like he's wearing the puffy shirt from that one episode of Seinfeld.
Hi, Captain.
Oh yeah, and speaking of clothing, can I point out too how despite Maria wearing a tank top for the majority of the game, the arm model when she's holding the pistol and later the shotgun makes it look like she's got a leather jacket on. Despite her arms shown to be bare, every single time we see her from a third-person perspective. I will say though that if nothing else, the shooting isn't terrible. I mean, it does feel pretty janky and the hit detection is kind of off at times, but I do have to praise this mechanic of being able to shoot the limbs off the zombies. At one point, I even shot someone so hard that it blasted their toupee off. In fact, if you hit them in the head, you can literally shoot their face off, leaving behind this skull all covered in sinew, and even see their eyeballs hanging out. I mean, it's pretty gnarly. Even if it is just a pretty poor imitation of those similar kind of gore effects we got in the Resident Evil remakes. And that is kind of weird in how this thing is clearly influenced by those later Resident Evil titles like the RE2 remake and even RE4, but then it also still includes constant transition screens when entering different areas, with those very traditional looking animations as opposed to just loading in the entire map at once and making it this seamless journey. What I also noticed as well is how the size of the buildings on the exterior is then completely off to how big they are inside. Like check out this house for instance, right, which I can run around the entirety of in a matter of seconds. But then when you go inside, it's like it's turned into a TARDIS or something. And it's comprised of a dozen different rooms that in no way could possibly fit into the same structure. Anyway, at this point, Maria finds a new pair of clothes, which, yeah, again, in a way that isn't totally ripping off Resident Evil, is basically just Claire's outfit from the original RE2. After that, we're attacked by yet again another bunch of zombies before heading into the village square, where some kind of female zombie appears, causing another wave of the undead to attack us. A female zombie, by the way, who never comes back for the rest of the game. I then run into some kind of drunk hobo who wants a bottle of vodka to help cure his hangover. A dude who also sits incredibly close to that campfire. Almost too close for someone who's got such a high blood alcohol level. Nothing else, at least I finally got some kind of objective, even if it does come from someone who looks like their beard's made of pubes. When heading back to the previous area, I put some dumb old asshole out of his misery before then finding a very familiar looking club key. But then as soon as I add it to my inventory, the icon weirdly changes to a crucifix. I don't know, maybe the developer mistyped something when he was coming up with the AI prompt to generate that image. Either way, this is the key that gets me into Maria's house, where her mum is apparently residing. And if nothing else, I will admit that the vibe in this place is definitely kinda creepy. The tight corners make it really tense to navigate, and you'll often turn a corner and see an enemy right there in your face. Not to mention the visual of these zombies clawing at the windows trying to get inside is downright eerie. Visually, it kinda reminds me a little bit of that old PT demo. However, it does also highlight the absolutely dog shit close quarters combat, especially in this basement area when you get ambushed from front and behind, and see these things easily grab onto you and rip your asshole completely open. Somehow I managed to survive all that, and I soon end up in Maria's room to check her email, putting my feet up for a bit and hopping onto AOL Messenger with one of her friends named Ivan. Yeah, Ivan, because I guess Dmitri, Sergey, Mikhail, and Vladimir weren't online that day. Ivan at least does give us a bit more plot progression, kind of, telling us that the virus has indeed been made by this Panicum company. Yeah, thanks Ivan, no shit. But before he can tell us any more, he goes offline. I then end up eventually finding the mum's room, where it becomes very apparent that she's been infected and is slowly turning into a zombie. You know, in case the incredibly bizarre facial expressions and constant twitching wasn't obvious enough. Maria, of course, seems completely oblivious to this, you know, despite having just killed a couple of dozen of these things already, and assumes that her mum just must have some kind of a fever. So now the main goal becomes to find some medicine for her in one of the buildings, hopefully to bring her body temperature down. Yeah, that'll do it. I do also at this point find a can of WD-40, which lets me get through a rusted door in the house that I visited earlier, which is where I'm heading to next. Which is where I'm introduced to these little glowing slug things, which is what I assume is supposed to be infecting corpses and bringing them to life. But more importantly, I find another pair of bolt cutters and a bottle of vodka for old mate back near the campfire. So I immediately rush back to give it to him, only to be told absolutely nothing of any real value. Oh yeah, outside of the fact that he reveals to me that he has hepatitis.
Stop saying shit like that.
The bolt cutters, however, do let me gain access to the nearby cemetery because, yeah, what rural village doesn't have its own cemetery a stone's throw away? Actually, you know what? I would imagine they do. And look, again, I will give credit where credit is due, because for this short stint through the cemetery, the game does shine for a little bit. I mean, going through a graveyard in the dead of night and being attacked by zombies, it's classic.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Even the side of this church we come across is super spooky, with the thunderstorm off in the distance and that otherworldly glow coming from the windows. It's great. Inside there's even this creepy old lady who looks like she's had her eyes clawed out, talking like a doomsayer, and speaking in metaphors about biblical times, the end of the world, and all that shit. Yet again, another NPC who's never seen or heard from ever again, because fuck it, who needs plot progression? In the church, I also find the spade key, and at this point, do I even really need to say it? It also started to dawn on me that at this point, I still didn't have the shotgun, despite having collected a few dozen shells over the past hour or so. But then in the next house I explore, after using the spade key, I do find a wooden shotgun, so I must be getting close. And then after finding another key and trying to enter the locked gate behind old mate, it outright won't let me go in there until I've found the shotgun. I did get lost for a bit here, running around in circles for like 20 minutes until I finally realised that I'd missed a single gate all the way back at the starting area, which then took me to this nightmare fuel cabin surrounded by horrific looking statues, as well as showing off this mysterious old man who, yet again, is never seen or heard from for the remainder of the story. Either way though, when I finally make my way inside, after sorting out a couple of quick puzzles, I've got the shotgun, which surprisingly doesn't disappoint. Also apparently being some kind of handheld lens flare generator. I mean, just look at the flares coming off this thing when I am it around. Oh yeah, and I love it too, how you can very clearly see it isn't even being held by your character. It's clearly just kind of hovering in the air and clipping through their hand. The only real thing I don't like about it though is the reload time, which locks you into the animation and is insanely long. Still though, honestly, this thing does survival horror shotguns pretty damn proud. Either way though, now that I've got it, I can enter the gate behind the campfire, where all I find is just more of the standard zombies. Kinda making me wonder why I needed a shotgun, considering a pistol's gotten me by just fine. This also happens to be the house of Maria's husband, Raslan, I think his name was. But before I can even get there, I have to, and I can scarcely believe this was a mechanic, dig up the grave of a dead cat to get a locker combination from the back of its collar.
Just want you to stop saying odd shit.
And I'm sure there's a your mum joke in there somewhere about digging up dead pussy, but I'm too highbrow for that kind of thing, alright?
Bullshit!
Soon enough though, I'm inside Raslan's house, which is where even more RE4 style knockoff shit is introduced, with the villagers now able to grow some very Las Plagas looking mutations out of their heads. But also, thankfully, including a new save point and an item box, considering the only one in the game up until that point was the one in the first house, which made saving and item management a real chore. All up, I found this place to be kind of like a mini Spencer mansion, with Raslan having left behind some items and clues to help Maria in her journey. Not to mention, he's also left behind an absolutely insane borry in the upstairs shitter. Like seriously dog, what is it with the people in this game and not flushing their toilets?
God damn!
Also, does this room look familiar? It ought to. It's basically just a copy and paste of one of the save rooms in RE2, even down to having a photography darkroom in the back.
I just can't do it. I can't take this shit no more, man.
Anyway, the main goal for this area, it seems, is to combine two broken record pieces together, which then reveals a heartfelt message that Raslan's left behind for Maria, something which, again, doesn't seem to serve any purpose. But for some weird reason, it's only after hearing this message that a heart key drops from the ceiling, which is one of the final keys we need. After going outside again is where we get the first boss fight. Kind of, against some old redneck looking dude with a chainsaw. Though I think boss fight might not be the best term, considering this guy goes down in like 3 or 4 shotgun shells. But at least with the heart key, I can finally get into the last building where we get medicine for Maria's mum, because, yeah, remember her? And after rushing back and giving her the medicine, this does lead into what's easily the most harrowing moment in the entire game, where the house is besieged by a whole bunch of zombies that are breaking in through the windows. And I will admit that this bit scared the absolute shit out of me. With the sound of all these windows getting broken and no way to really possibly see where it's coming from. I mean, it was tense, and my asshole went tight enough at this point to crush macadamia nuts. After this, I'm then boarding up the window so nothing else can break in, before then being given the very clear objective to repair the village tractor so we can both escape, as opposed to repairing the village bike, which is what your mum's known as. With me now also having a crucial item that lets me unlock another gate that's behind old mate. Which is also when Maria suddenly has the brilliant plan to find a syringe so she can inject herself with this hobo's blood, in the hopes that it somehow stops the zombies from attacking her. So let me see if I've got this straight. One of the main objectives in the game at this point is to give myself hepatitis. Brilliant.
Alright, you wanna get nuts?
Let's get nuts!
And it's like, look lady, I don't know if you know much about what hepatitis is, but I'm pretty sure it's not the kind of thing you want to give yourself. And again, like, considering how well she's been doing this far with a pistol and shotgun, is it really that necessary? Damn, that was a big testy pop. Anyway, in the next area, the military shows up, but very quickly gets their asses handed to them. Which doesn't really add anything new outside of just kind of teasing us with a bunch of AKs all over the ground that we're unable to use. We then come across what looks like an orphanage or something off in the distance with a creepy little girl hanging around out front. And again, do I even need to say it? A creepy little girl that vanishes and never comes back. At this point, really just making me wonder why they bothered including these things at all. I guess they all just came packaged together in whatever asset pack the developer bought off the Unreal Engine store. I then head into this building where, in reality, oops, there goes gravity, it turns out to be a whole new mini-mansion area to explore, with more card-themed keys to find and a couple of puzzles to solve. And I'm happy to eat crow and admit that this section really wasn't that bad. And I did kind of enjoy exploring the building and putting all the pieces together to find my way back out again. With the end result being that you'll find the instructions for fixing the tractor, along with the first component you need, which is a toolkit. The journey after this back to the village isn't that exciting. Oh, you know, except for the part where the game starts throwing fucking werewolves at you. Yeah, dog, literally werewolves, because now they're really putting the village back into a bowler village. And these things are definitely way more challenging than anything you've come up against before, with a couple of swipes from them easily knocking off half your health points, with there also being a good dozen or so in total that you've got to kill. In fact, this was the only time in the entire playthrough where I almost died. Once I'm back at the village, I make a quick stop off to see old mate and deliberately give myself hepatitis, lol, before heading off to continue my search for the other two tractor parts, where after doing the monster mash with another couple of werewolves, I head to the farm area and get immediately thrown into the shittiest boss fight of all time, against a zombie bull.
Oh, shit.
Again though, I struggled to call it a boss fight considering it's over in about 20 seconds, even though the bull absolutely rammed the shit out of me a couple of times. I then head back to one of the other houses to grab the diesel fuel, which was the last component I needed, and then I can finally repair the tractor itself. And although this thing has to be repaired in different spots all over, like the tires in the engine, it still shows Maria underneath it every time. Another mini-boss enemy shows up after this wielding a chainsaw, just way more blatantly copying Dr. Salvador. Only it's like they couldn't be bothered cutting eye holes into this guy's mask. So it's just a guy wearing a bag over his head with no visible means to even be able to see where he's going. I immediately go to leave at this point, but I'm forgetting one very crucial thing. Yeah, Maria's mum, who's totally not going to be zombified when I go back to get her after having left her alone for the past hour. And oh, would you look at that, she's turned into a zombie. Who saw that coming? Then there's a short cinematic after that where Maria breaks down over her mum's death, as if she's like somehow responsible. Which, you know what, actually, I guess she is, considering she just put about half a dozen shotgun shells into her mum's bald dome. With nothing else left to do, though, it's finally time to get out of here on that tractor and say bye-bye to Ebola Village once and for all. Which ends in a slideshow of what is very clearly AI art. As Maria also gives some kind of a speech about how this isn't the end of things and she's nowhere near giving up. Followed by the end credits where a guy named Victor gives himself credit for 90% of the work on the game, to the point that you almost gotta wonder why he bothered crediting anyone else at all. Though he does at least thank that Jill Valentine cosplayer, so I guess that's good.
Oh yeah, well that's nice, isn't it?
I also get an achievement for having beaten the game without saving, which is totally horseshit, considering I was saving my game every 5 minutes. Along with a ranking screen, which again uses that image of Jill Valentine. Not to mention it tells me I've been rewarded amulets, which, as far as I can tell, is a non-existent mechanic. I don't know, maybe that's coming in the Ebola Village DLC. All up, I don't think I'd say that Ebola Village is a terrible game, but it is absolutely a lazy one. And it just can't ever seem to lose that stink, where every aspect of it just feels store-bought or like it's some kind of asset flip. Like, just take for instance how your main character's supposed to be a normal civilian, and yet she's wearing tactical gloves the entire time. A lot of the other visual elements and animations just seem half-assed. Like when reloading the pistol, for instance, you can very clearly see she's not even loading in a fresh magazine. And even something as old as Half-Life from like 1998 would animate a new magazine going in. We also mentioned the fact that there's only 3 weapons in the entire game: the pistol, the shotgun, and the knife. In fact, technically it's only 2, because you can't even effectively use the knife, considering all the enemies in the game can grab onto you when you're in melee range. I do think the layout and the structure of some of the puzzles, along with the inventory management, is fine for the most part. But the overall package and the presentation, it just feels so shoddily thrown together, like it's someone's first time ever making a game. The only thing there is that it isn't, and this is really just the beginning of this whole Ebola rabbit hole that I fell down, with there actually being 3 games that came out before this, along with there even being a short film based off the events in this 4th game. Not to mention a 5th game already in the works. And I did contemplate checking out those older titles, but even the brief time I spent with the 3rd one made it very clear that Ebola Village is the apex of the series this far.
How did you get out from under the lock? You can't get out of here. See that cross? It will never let you escape from here. Monster! Stay away from me! Back off! Get away!
You know the old saying, how if you don't have anything nice to say about something, well, don't say it at all? Yeah, well, that's how I felt about Ebola 3. And I don't know, like maybe Ebola 1 and Ebola 2 are better, maybe, but to be honest, I don't want to know. Overall, this thing has an 86% rating on Steam reviews, and while I don't buy into the whole conspiracy theory that bot or paid reviews are a thing on this platform, having such a high score does definitely raise a few red flags. Or, you know, at least make me question the eyesight of the average Steam user. Still though, if nothing else, these kind of titles just make all the other genuinely amazing indie horror games look even better in comparison, with things like Conscript and Labyrinth of the Demon King. But if you just absolutely had to play a survival horror game set in the most mundane, textbook, Slavic-looking village of all time, well, I don't know, man, I guess you could do worse.